Founders of technology businesses typically find themselves having to outsource the job of building the product to what is known as a software agency, and more often than not, founders turn to agencies that are based overseas, usually in Eastern Europe or Asia. What is less well known is that particularly first-time founders often have an experience doing this that is fatally bad. It's quite common for a founder to hand over what in real terms is a huge amount of money to an agency and get nothing in return. So you tend not to hear about people that happens to, because after that crappy experience, they often give up on their dreams of having their own technology business and go back to their day jobs. Part of the problem is just generally how agencies manage their work. But, and this is something that will keep me awake as a CTO who's been doing this for a long time, one challenge every type of business has is how do you go about qualifying an agency as being competent? Like the one that you select, how do you know they can actually do the job at all? Let's find out. So chapter 1. How agencies work. So in this video, we're interested in learning about how to qualify an agency as being the right one for us. This means we need to take a long list of agencies and go through some process to whittle that down first to a short list and then to the one that we're actually going to give the commission to. Now on my channel, I have an awful lot of videos about how agencies work and how to get the best out of them, and I don't want to repeat all that here, but there are a couple of things that we need to understand to contextualize this video. Most non-technology founders go down a journey of wanting to start their business and end up almost intuitively knowing that they need to find an agency, and soon after they start their journey, they learn that agencies based in the UK are substantially more expensive than an agency based overseas, and this is the first part where they get tripped up. So I'm based in the UK and I tend to have quite a UK-centric way of presenting my content, but for the UK you can really read any Western countries. So outsourcing in the UK and other Western countries are consultative in how they work. The engagement you have with them is consultancy-led, whereas any other type of agency that you engage overseas will use a staffing model in how they work. This means if you engage a company in, for example, Bristol or Cardiff, Leeds, etc., you'll get this consultative-led engagement, and this can be really, really useful, which I'm going to come on to. But if you engage an agency that's anywhere else in the world, they will operate like they are throwing bodies at a project. An offshore agency will build you anything you ask them to build without any real consideration as to whether you should build it or not. If you tell them you want the software equivalent of a chocolate teapot that you're looking to sell into nursing homes, they will do exactly that, despite the fact that that's the worst illustration I could think of when writing this script. That difference between consultation-based and staff-based approaches is something you need to factor in the price. A UK agency will cost you £80 an hour compared to £50 an hour in Eastern Europe, e.g. Poland, and £20 an hour in Asia, e.g. India. But that £30 an hour price differential between £80 in the UK and £50 in Eastern Europe, you should notionally think of that as the cost of you buying advice. The reason for this is that startups are operating in full-on experimentation mode because very new businesses have not yet found their product market fit. Agencies are, frankly, terrible at dealing with clients who are experimenting. They exist practically solely to provide staff to existing technical teams and established businesses. And established businesses are never looking for product market fit because the reason why they are established is because they have found it. And that's the fundamental difference there. Startups are looking for product market fit, but established businesses have found that product market fit. That difference, spending 30k more to outsource to the UK, the value of that consultancy could save you more than just your blushes. The point of putting this early doors in this video is that outsourcing to the UK and outsourcing outside of the UK are very different beasts, and you can't compare like to like. Chapter 2. Finding the long list. The safest way to find an agency is to ask someone that you trust to give you a recommendation. And we know this is generally the safest way to find someone to help us no matter what it is that we're doing in our business. E.g. if we need someone to help train the family dog or fix the roof or whatever, recommendations tend to be a really safe way of finding expertise. So the next trick, if you can't find someone in your first level network, is to socialize the query on LinkedIn. This can be a bit hit and miss, and it depends on how widely LinkedIn broadcasts your post looking for support, so you may have to do this a few times. If you're going down the road of trying to find an agency in the UK, there is a trick you can do with Google, which is to run a query in a private browsing window like Director Custom Software UK LinkedIn. And Google will surface what is actually a fairly enormous list of options, but what Google is doing is it's finding anyone in the LinkedIn database that has got the fact that they're a director and the fact that they are involved with custom software and the fact that they're in the UK. And this is a really good way of making a really long list. However, unlike searching on Google normally, where you get the best results to the top, that list from Google will be completely random. So you can't rely on the people being at the top of that list as being the ones that you should prefer. What you need to do is scroll down until you get like 100 or so names. You copy and paste that entire output into ChatGPT and you run the query, extract the names from this list as a table, and then you paste in the list from Google. That will encourage ChatGPT to go through that raw list of information from Google and give you a table that you can paste into Excel. So take that table, paste it into Excel, and then choose the ones you fancy. And from that very long list, you might as well just stick pins in the list blindfold until you get the 10 or so that you want to take on to further qualification. So from each of those people, You then need to go and dig in and see whether they are going to be a good fit for you. Annoyingly, that list only seems to work when operating Google from whichever country you're currently in. For example, modifying that query to find agencies in Poland or Warsaw or wherever doesn't actually return results as effectively. So how do you find agencies in other countries? Honestly, I would not try and find them proactively. Realistically, if you're looking for 3 to 4 agencies to give you a quote and this is your first time doing it, and if you don't have experience of commissioning software projects from agencies, your best line of defense is personal recommendations. I would just keep digging and asking until you found the long list of people that you wanted to investigate. I would not trust any agency approach you using a cold direct message on LinkedIn either. It seems really harsh to say this, but as a non-technology person, the chances of you getting seriously bitten by someone just popping up in your inbox is too big. There's a similar issue with organic search on Google. The agencies that show up when you search in the organic listings will be those that have consistently spent £500 a month for at least 24 months to end up at the top of those listings. Google search doesn't really work for software agency listings because the only method to appear on those listings is consistent month in, month out application of spend, either with an SEO agency or to appear in the paid links by pay-per-click. If you are going to rely on those Google listings, and do the same trick that I did before and try and negate the fact that people are pushing themselves up to the top of the list. Scroll through and get a couple of hundred results, paste them into ChatGPT and ask it to create a table, and then stick pins at random into whatever listings you get to the ones you might want to qualify further. Chapter 3, qualifying on site. So just to orientate you into a problem, the core thing that you are trying to do is spend a life-changing sum of money with a company that you don't know. That happens to be based overseas, probably. You're either a pre-seed investment, in which case you've managed to find something like £50,000 from friends, family and followers to spend on the project, or you have got your seed investment, in which case you could easily be looking to spend £125,000, £150,000 on that project with a company that you don't know yet, buying something that you've never bought before. Although the objective is not to screw up that process, fundamentally you need a backstop, and the backstop you need to get is being able to take that supplier to court if everything does go to custard. You need an organisation that is financially resilient enough so that you have some recourse if things don't go well. So herein lies your first problem. If you're based in the UK and you commission an agency also in the UK and you find yourself needing to litigate, you can do that. If you commission an overseas agency as a tiny business who's just scraped together the cash to pay for the project in the first place, you effectively have no legal remedy. You know, it's going to be fantastically hard to take a software supplier to court, whatever you do, but at least if it's within the same jurisdiction as you do have a chance of being able to do it. But if you're cross jurisdiction, you really don't. So back to my earlier point that a £50,000 project in Poland may cost £80,000 in the UK, that £30,000 difference is not just consultancy. There is a backstop there in which you can take legal action, which you don't have if you're doing a cross-jurisdiction contract. So as a sidebar, I'm not a lawyer, and I would strongly advise doing everything in your power to avoid litigating a complex IT project, but this is a factor that's almost universally not appreciated by first-time founders. You need some way to get yourself out of a sticky situation. There are 2 reasons why size is important when it comes to the agency and why it comes first in our qualification process. Firstly, they need to be big enough to do the job well, but not so big that your small project gets lost within all the other stuff they're doing. Secondly, if you do end up with a dispute with them and they want to give you your money back, they actually need to be able to give you your money back, and they need a certain financial mass in order to do that because the real cost of your project is so expensive. So this is another situation where there's a big difference between the way the UK and non-UK agencies operate. In the UK, if you ask a business owner how many employees a company has, the answer you get back will generally be the number of PAYE employees on the book. If you ask a UK agency how many developers they have and they say 30, it's pretty likely that they have 30 UK resident PAYE employees. This is sort of down to a cultural convention, part of the unwritten rules about how companies within the UK negotiate business with each other, but also partly because a UK agency knows that what you're paying for is this consultancy idea. It doesn't matter that they don't have 500 developers working for them because you want confidence that they've got that core set of people who really know what they're doing. So the number of bodies that the UK agency has isn't as important, and so there's not as much need to fudge the numbers. So if you are in the UK, you don't even really need to ask them that question. If they're the right size business, i.e. they're of a certain mass, you can just look for them on a website called Endeley. So when you do go and look up a company there, the number of employees metric that they have, it can be a bit sketchy. But if they're a tiny business, the number of employees doesn't show up at all or is really wrong. But if they're kind of the size of business we want to deal with, that number's not going to be too far out. well. It's very common with offshore agencies, though, that the relationship they have with their developers is looser. Oftentimes it's set up more of a loose connection of self-employed associates, and the agency may say they have 200 developers, but what they actually mean is they have the email addresses of 300 developers and an associates agreement signed with all. I am perhaps being uncharitable, but these businesses exist to solve staffing problems, and in order to do that they need to look like they have a lot of staff, and that's how they present their business to the world. As a result, it can be really hard to properly size an offshore agency, so you have to go in more directly with your questioning. What you're looking for is an agency that can run around 5 to 8 projects of your size at the same time. Notionally, you can allocate about 5 people to a development project of the sort of size that you're looking to do. So as a result, you're looking for about 25 to 40 development staff plus a handful of admin and management staff. Because an agency would not be expecting this question, once they know what the project is, you can kind of cheat by asking them, how many projects like mine can you run at the same time? And you will normally get an honest answer from that. Not that they're necessarily going to be withholding information and being dishonest, but you'll normally get an answer that cuts to the quick and gives you that right information. The caveat there is that they actually need to be at a stage where they could start to put together a price proposal, i.e. they know to know what your project is. We're going to come back to that. But once you are there and they do know what you want to build, if the answer comes back as, oh, we can do about 5 to 8 projects like this for a UK agency, you've sized it right. For an offshore agency, because of the different staffing model and how they present, you're looking for a response that's about 4 times that. 20 to 32 projects of the size of yours, although if they give you in the 5 to 8 range, you should accept it. Anything smaller than that 5 projects like yours, and which includes yours, I suppose, then the agency is going to be too small for a business like yours. If you're a technology person, you can actually work with smaller agencies. What I'm trying to do here is give you a steer if you're a non-technology person. If you're an established business, you can risk it if you're confident that you can litigate a remedy if needed. Anything bigger than 8 projects, and you won't get the attention you need. You'll just be a small fish in the masses of projects or in extremely large projects and extremely large clients they have. So reiterate, coming into this section, you need to have your long list of agencies you want to work with, and then you're looking to whittle that down based on size, and now we can look at capability. Chapter 4, qualifying on capability. Counterintuitively, the capability of the team is less important than the points we've looked at above, i.e. we're looking to reduce bias in how that long list of suppliers is created, and using the size of the organisation as an initial proxy for capability on the assumption that a business has grown to be that reasonable size, ipso facto has to be able to deliver. What we're looking for next is trying to ascertain whether the capabilities they have are right for you. There are 2 things that are not generally necessary when it comes to the capability of the agency, and the first is their preferred technology solution. Within limits, the actual technology that an agency wants to use in your project won't matter. This kind of wasn't the case 20 years ago, but in this modern era, most difference in technical approaches to how a project is done comes down to preference. And there are some exceptions, but as I say, generally you don't need to stress about this. The second is whether the agency has done a project similar to your one. It stands to reason you would intuit that this would be a good signal of them being able to achieve success in your space, but the reality is that even similar projects in similar spaces with similar goals have a much deeper set of differences than you might think. However, both of these factors, when you reverse them, do become relevant. Most technology businesses that are founded by non-technology people are B2B or business-to-business software as a service type businesses. There are fewer startups that focus on B2C, but B2C has some odd specificities in terms of how the product has to work. That means it's essential if you're building a B2C product, you have to find an agency with specific experience in B2C, and actually that can be quite difficult. Likewise with B2B, seeing as most solutions are B2B, it's generally not hard to find an agency that's got B2B experience. Similarly, if you're building a solution that has a fancy model, such as D2C or direct to consumer, or even B2G business to government, you should find a specialized agency. And I would also suggest that for these wider business types, as a startup, you should not offshore those. You should definitely prefer to find a consultative domestic outsourcer, because those types of solution get quite sprawling from an overall IT systems and operational strategy, and you will need specialist help from that, and it can be very overwhelming trying to balance the domestic needs of the business with having an offshore agency. In a similar vein, some industries have a preference for technical approaches, and you may not be aware of that at the early stages of your business's life. For example, the NHS in the UK has a strong preference for Microsoft-based technologies because Microsoft have had their tanks parked on the lawn of a notional NHS HQ for 30 years, and there's an unconscious bias there now. Other industries have other biases, so try and discover those early on and get your agency to align with that. Chapter 5. Engagement. Now that we're at this point, we've trimmed our list down by using recommendations and applying randomness to remove bias, qualified each organisation by their size, and then looked at the alignment of capability to our business model. Now we can look at how we actually start to interact with the agencies. But you may be thinking, hang on, Matt, haven't we been interacting with all the agencies until now? And I will say, well, maybe, but it wasn't serious. We were just chatting. Now it's time for those serious discussions. To preface this, one thing to be acutely aware of is that agencies are desperate for your business. Finding customers for bespoke software projects like MVP development is very, very difficult from their perspective. As a result, the agency will be eager to do this project, even if they know deep down that they may struggle to deliver. You have to be the sensible one and do the bulk of the qualification. What you ultimately need is to get 2 or 3 of the agencies to produce a price proposal for you based on the specification of what you're trying to build. And this is where things do get difficult because you won't have a specification, you will have to synthesize one somehow. A specification is essentially just a list of functions and behaviors the software will have when it's finished. However, it is a specialist technical document, and as a non-technology founder, it's very unlikely you'll be able to create a spec that is canonical enough to quote against. And my earlier point stands in that any agency may be so keen to land a project that they will produce a quote on the assumption that the rough and ready specification they've got is roughly right, and they'll be able to work it out later. It won't be roughly right, and they won't be able to work it out later, but the fallout from that will come back to you and your wallet. So it's really important that you organize this well. The most effective way to synthesize specification is to ask one of the agencies to undertake a scoping exercise for you, and what this means is they do a short consultation exercise. The output from that exercise is the specification. You will have to pay for this, and I would budget around £4,000 to get a UK agency to do this and around £2,500 for an offshore agency. What you will get from a scoping exercise are 2 documents, one being the specification, which would have been produced after extensive interviews with you and the stakeholders within the business, and the second document is a proposal containing the price. A soft advantage of the scoping exercise is that you'll know whether you like and trust the staff of the agency or not, because you would have spent a lot of time talking to them. This is clearly a really important indicator. Do they get what you're trying to do? Do they think they can help you? And is there an alignment of values? Is this going to be a genuine partnership? A corollary disadvantage is that you will tend to select the vendor that did the scoping exercise, i.e. the actual process of commissioning somewhere to do the scope can by default select the supplier for the final work. And this isn't really what you want to do, so my advice here is to always take that specification, produce some scoping exercise, and send it over to 1 or 2 agencies on the list to see which prices they come back with in order to calibrate what was originally done. Now, that's not going to help in that you would have formed a relationship with the one that was doing the scope, but what you do want to kind of free that up. You don't just want to automatically go with the one that's doing the scope. Anyway, at least you're making the decision based on the process of kissing 3 frogs rather than just kissing 1. And this is about as far as you can go as a non-technology person. You know, if you're a deep technologist, you can start to apply stress tests. You can start to really put the agency under a bit of pressure and try and get to the bottom of how they work and why they do what they do, gauge their technical nous and their delivery capability, and see other red flags in how they're presenting. But you would either need a technical co-founder or a fractional CTO or a best bud who's one of those as a senior technologist to do that. And in the absence of a tame person being at your beck and call to do that, the things that we've been through in this video will stand you in good stead to find the agency that's right for you. Some YouTubers have sponsors, but I sponsor my own videos, so here's a message from me, my own sponsor. If you're a non-technology founder starting a technology business, I have a self-paced course on my website that takes you from the idea you have to getting a fully operational and profitable technology business startup. I'll show you in the course how to get your MVP built, how to find product market fit, how to get traction, and get from traction to either building your pitch deck and financials to get seed investment, or turning that traction into cash flow you need to get your startup to scale up. If you'd like to learn more, there's a link in the description, or just head to fractionalmatt.com/course. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.